And we are on. Good evening or good morning, wherever you are. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for putting this on. This is Psycho Silver. My name is Jerome. I do hope that today you're counting your wealth in ounces, and especially that you're holding your word to yourself. Most importantly, thank you for putting on the show. I got a whole bunch of news for us because that's what I do. Until I grow my channel to a big enough size to get some good guests on, we're going to do the news. And I'm going to try and do a great job of that. What I do is I cruise the internet for hours every evening, hours on hours. And I pick out all the best posts from Reddit, the best posts from Twitter. I look through all sorts of news articles and I decide what's most interesting, what I would most want to see if I didn't have the time to be looking through all this stuff. What would I want to see? And I pick that out and I set it aside and I put it into a little presentation for you. And hopefully this can be of service to somebody. I do hope to, let me get rid of my gum. I do hope to grow this channel to a point where we do get some good guests, and also that we can do a little bit more research and maybe spend some time on some topics that go super in depth, and we'll take some research and put that into maybe a video with a little more production value. But for now, I think this is pretty cool. We're just surfing the web and checking out all the cool things to find. And lucky for me, or maybe unluckily, I don't know, there's so many things going on in the world right now that simply just browsing Twitter and Reddit, it's like a bottomless pit, especially on the economic front. There's so many things happening, and to me, this stuff is very interesting. So it's hard to know how to feel about it. On the one hand, I'm like a kid in the candy store because I really enjoy these kinds of topics, and I'm self-educating. I wouldn't say self-educated. I'm self-educating on geopolitics and finance and precious metals. And it's been so fun to learn. But on the other hand, we definitely are watching the death of the dollar in real time. We are watching a potential collapse of the Western Empire in real time, depending on how this goes with the unsustainable debt. It's hard to say. There's many different opinions out there, and I've been involved in the precious metals community for at least 7-10 years now. I've been stacking the whole time. And there was a belief out there that we would see some sort of a conclusion much sooner. But here we are. And now in hindsight, it all makes sense. I mean, these things ought to take time. Even a fast reconciliation, would be a minimum a decade, right? 15 years. And so as I age and I get to see how events unfold in real time and living through that experience, it is a slow motion process, at least in the eyes of someone experiencing it firsthand. I hope that all makes sense. So tonight, I do have a bunch of news for us, and there's lots of cool stuff. So let's go ahead and jump in. Thank you for joining me. Ooh, OBS is being a little tricky with me. Okay, here we go. Working on some memes, working on some shorts over there. All right, I figured we would start. This is where I've had my eye. 10-year treasury. The 10-year treasury has been the pain point. And I got to admit, before I was educated or I had people explain to me how the economy really works, how this debt-based system really works, I couldn't say that I had a full understanding of what are the real drivers of the economy? And now that we do see it become unstable, you definitely see the correlation between our treasuries and every government's treasuries and instability. And you can see this is set for 1 year. Let me set this back to, let's go 1 month. We do see here that we had a little bit of reprieve, but already we are about to cross the 4% threshold. We're knocking on the door right there. And right over here is where a lot of our problems began. And we're already up over the top of that. And I did find a coinciding news article. This is from Bloomberg, and they are behind a paywall. But Bloomberg writes, the most powerful buyers and treasuries are all bailing at once. Fed, foreign governments, commercial banks are all stepping back. More pain for bond investors may be in store amid buyer void. And so then the speculation is what happens when there is no buyers, right? While the rates go higher and higher. And do we have a moment like in the Bank of Japan where you do see central banks step in and become the buyers to stabilize the debt market? Interesting stuff. I had here we go. And also in the metals, we do see gold slightly down, silver slightly down, relatively flat. We're underneath the $20 mark in silver again, and it's kind of bizarre to see gold at 1,600 too. Given all that's going on, we know there's an active buying spree in the metals, visible all over the globe, visible in the data that's posted from the various vaults, the LBMA, the COMEX. We see very clearly that there's a lot of purchasing happening. We see that in the data from the precious bullion dealing websites, and how the price continues to sink with the volume we've experienced is the reason we have this channel. We all know why. Let's have a look at crypto real quick, and then we're going to move over to Twitter. Crypto under pressure, not moving too much. I haven't looked at Ethereum in a while. Ouch. Back to 1,200. If I was not so concerned with the state of the world, this would be a beautiful place to buy some Ethereum. I like that price, but I want some real money in my hand. I'm worried. And speaking of Bitcoin, I did find this one interesting article real quick before I move over to Twitter. Bitcoin mining difficulty hits record high. How do you say that? Boy founder sells entire stake. And I've seen this company before. I knew they were a major player in the mining of crypto. And I just assume that a lot of it has to do with the energy, correct? It's energy that's putting, the lower prices in Bitcoin, and how many people got suckered in the Bitcoin rally to investing in all this new equipment, maybe extending their operation, trying to grow their business. And now with the lower prices, we thought we were going to continue up to 100,000 was the meme. 100,000 Bitcoin was the meme. And that never came to fruition. And here we are, under 20,000, and rising costs of energy, which I would not be surprised would ultimately be the Achilles heel of Bitcoin. And it was also in the news today that Ethereum changing their protocol to be less energy intensive, able to make that pivot before Bitcoin. I know there's a lot of developers working on Bitcoin to make it better, and then you need consensus. And it appears that that is where Bitcoin will need to go eventually, at least if you're listening to the likes of Elon Musk. But how, at what speed? And that's the problem with democracy, right? Democracy processes at a slow speed. And so when will Bitcoin make that pivot, or do they at all? All interesting questions. So over to Twitter. And what I do like to do is I surf the web. I go to all the most interesting websites, and I started to funnel everything through my Twitter. So I have records of what I'm looking at, and then I kind of have a centralized place that I can run the show through. And so you tell me what you think of this if you have an opinion. But I do get a lot of information off of Twitter, but it's not only Twitter. Here we have an article from Zero Hedge. World food prices are decisively rolling over. Decisively rolling over. That is the language of a politician, right? If this was the price of Bitcoin, it would be what would it be? It would be taking a little rest before its next leg up, right? it just needs to cool off a little bit before the next leg up. But when it comes to food prices, there'll be no next leg up, right? Decisively rolling over. Makes it sound permanent. Makes it sound for sure. Until when? Black Swan. Until when? War. Until what? But here we do see, and this is the UN Food and Agriculture World Food Price Index. Good to know. And I am pleased to see if anyone's getting relief in their food prices. And I don't want to dig in this. I don't want to dig into this too deeply. Oh yeah, I do like. There's people are they picked up on this. Decisively rolling over sounds a bit too momentumy. Decisive seems appropriate given a 6-month change. Fastest, worse since GFC. That's right. And yet, consumer price index for all urban consumers. So we do see that, I guess when you average it out amongst people living in all areas, the costs continue to rise. I suspect that's what's going on here, because people that are living on fish and rice, I guess, are going to see, or if they're living on grain, you'll see a change in the price a little more quickly. But people living in urban areas, I assume, would be eating all sorts of processed food. And as that food's being processed, the price changes get absorbed, and they're not going to necessarily mark them down. We've seen all this shrinkflation. They're not going back to the bigger containers, right? They're not going to give the consumer the wrong idea. On to the next. I could get caught up in that one article for a really long time. I thought this was interesting. Here we have an article from the Asia Times. And I've been finding some good economic news from this website. Ismail floods Malaysia with cash, then calls snap polls. The Malaysian leader flip-flops his position by calling early elections just days after tabling the nation's biggest ever feel-good budget. Isn't this how democracy works? Where is Joe Biden, and does he approve of this behavior? And it really makes you wonder. And I'm going to get into it a lot more in a few minutes here, but what are we going to do? We are less than a month away from an election, and the Fed is going to continue the pain. And you have Biden. I can't even keep up with the story of student debt. I never really expected them to forgive it. But they sure like to put that idea. They like to dangle that idea out there every so often. Who's falling for that still? By the way, who's falling? All right. Let's read a little bit of this, not too much. Malaysia is headed towards a controversial early general election at a time when parts of the nation are expected to face heavy flooding due to monsoon rains. Prime Minister Ismail confirmed the dissolution of parliament in a televised address, paving the way for snap polls to be held within 60 days. The announcement follows days of speculation that the legislature should be dissolved soon after tabling the biggest ever Malaysian government budget worth 372 billion ringgit or 80 billion US dollar for 2023. The record spending plan has not yet been passed, raising questions about the country's fiscal roadmap. Yes, and I assume for many of these politicians, all they have to do is propose it, right? And get the headline, and the people that are not aware, they see the headline and they're like, yeah, I get more stuff. This is who I vote for, to get more stuff. Life will be easier. And then they can just scrap the plan, revise it, right? That is what this channel is all about. I can't wait to have guests on this show to talk about this sort of stuff. Here we have overnight FX hedge Hang Seng Tech index down more than 3%. That's very significant. And I wonder if this is a response to there's some sort of, what's the right word? They're blocking the import of chips from China and semiconductors. They're blocking China's ability to reach the market with chips. And I do believe there's an article coming up that's talking about how the economic war with China is starting to spiral into a full-fledged economic war, no holds barred economic war. I never know where we're at with that. Next up, here we had an excellent post from Neon Revolt. This one guy makes Gab completely worth it. Let me open up a couple of these so we don't gotta wait too much. Here Neon Revolt wrote, when the Hunt brothers orchestrated the first silver squeeze in the 80s, they drained the COMEX down to 50 million ounces. As of today, the apes have drained it below 40 million ounces. An unbelievable act of unrelenting pressure. All right. Once again, Neon Revolt writes, don't think bank runs can happen here. The FDIC only has about $121 billion in its coffers, but it covers about 21 trillion in deposits. I wonder what would come. It seems like we would have inflation before a bank run. I mean, I guess it depends on the circumstances, right? But so far, they've been so good at preventing inflation because it's highly psychological, right? And so they've done a really good job. Well, I won't say they've done good with inflation, but I'm saying like it hasn't gotten to the psyche of the masses where, you know, people are aware of it, they're concerned. But where inflation, in my opinion, would really take off or lead to hyperinflation or some sort of panic is when it gets into the psyche of the masses. But they've been so good at preventing people from thinking about it that way. From my normie friends, I've barely heard any concern over inflation. To them, I guess it seems like a bummer, but not anything that they have anything to worry about or control over. I don't know. There's a lot to unpack there. But I would expect more concern about inflation before a bank run, right? That's what I would assume. But if we do have some sort of event or some sort of crisis that perhaps starts in Europe or in other countries, and that does make it into the awareness of people here, would they go and begin to withdraw their money? Probably. But I'm also not convinced there's the banks. I'm not convinced the banks don't have the tools to deal with that either. And by tools, I don't mean they're just going to prevent people from withdrawing. I think there's a way for them to paper that over as well. But we'll see. What do I know? These are questions I'm asking. Here's an article from CNBC. 42% of Americans say money has negative impact on their mental health. And I'm certain we've been conditioned to be so impulsive. I'm sure there's some people out there that are prudent. They exercise forethought. They have a look at their spending habits, and they're still under stress. But out of this 42%, I would say the vast majority, 95% of them, are very impulsive with their spending. They're living paycheck to paycheck. They have financing they can't afford: car, home, phone, right? New phone, financed. Let's read into this a little bit. A host of financial concerns have taken a toll on Americans' wallet and their mental health, from high inflation and whiplashing markets to general economic uncertainty. Some 42% of U.S. adults said money has a negative impact on their mental health. Of those who said money has affected their mental health, most cited feeling stressed, anxious, overwhelmed. Half said that looking at their bank account is a trigger. Have you ever been there? I know it's bad. I don't want to look. I know it's bad. While others noted that paying a bill, making a purchase, or having to talk about money makes them anxious. Also, because we're so money centric, we're so well fed. We have access to everything you can possibly wish for, but money still makes people feel nervous. And I would assume that it's almost purely social. People worried about what other people think about them. When individuals suffer money challenges or they're working through money issues, there's tremendous potential for stress. The study also found that 28% of those who said money has a negative impact on their health worry about it on a daily basis. That's a tough way to live, and that is reality. I wonder if there'll ever be an opportunity when we do reach this crisis point. Would people be willing to learn? Like when they hit rock bottom, I want to talk to you about sound money. Sit down. I'd like to talk to you about the Federal Reserve and sound money. We need reform. No, they just want mommy and daddy to kiss it better, right? That is the dark psychology of money. Unfortunately, I mean, people can barely take control of their health, right? And you can't help but notice that condition day in and day out. Next up, I did pull this off of TikTok. And one of the cool things about this video is it has like quite a few views on TikTok. And I do know that, for TikTok, 500,000 isn't super huge because some of the videos get crazy amount. Sometimes it's kind of impossible.
Do you want to see what's inside this box? Well, let me show you. If you're thinking about getting into investments or you don't know where to put some money, this might be a good idea for you. This is 1 kg, 1,000 grams of pure silver. Now, in this particular form, this is the cheapest way you can buy silver, even in the European market, when you used to get charged tax on bullion. However, if you look at this particular bar, you'll see a face value of $30. That means in the European Union, you actually have a loophole where they don't charge you VAT on the actual silver. So if it has a face value, you don't get charged VAT. So if you think that we may be going into recession or hard times, this stuff might be a good investment to keep your money still growing during uncertain times. Before you scroll,
I do wonder if that little music's going to cause me problems here when I go to post this. We'll find out.
Before you scroll on,
I do want to just point out about that is I spent a little time on TikTok and I was considering maybe posting a lot of stuff there, but the attention span of those videos is so low. And I want to go deeper than I guess I have to do long format content, especially when I really get into what I want to get into. But I'm impressed by anyone that can get people interested in precious metals, especially on TikTok. The good thing though is it's very visual, and that's the best, maybe one of the best things for attracting people that might not normally be into that sort of stuff, that it's super visual. And of course, it's commonly known in the stacking community. It's not everybody, but a good chunk of people, at least your natural stackers that have that inclination, when you do put a piece of metal in their hand for the first time, they're like, wow, I really got something here. That's what happened to me. First time I held some precious metal, I said, oh, this is the way. I knew it instantly. This is super interesting. This is so interesting right here. Here we have a post on Wall Street Silver by the Due Diligence Master. This has got to be Silver to Mars. Silver to Mars writes, Credit Suisse is the largest unit holder of SLV. They own 2% of SLV worth $190 million. UBS is close second, Bank of America third. Institutional ownership of SLV amounts to $3 billion or 31%. Presumably the rest is held by retail. I don't know. That sounds suspicious in itself. Really? 2/3 would be held by retail of SLV. I don't know about that one, but I'm here to learn. But am I just making a coincidence where there's no coincidence? I'm not saying that the problems at Credit Suisse are because of SLV, but it's just kind of weird. It's just kind of weird. And I'm not too familiar with UBS. I don't know what it means, but we're gonna file that one away. We're gonna store that one in our memory palace. It might come in handy later. It's something. I don't know what, but it's something. If I were a detective, I would say I have a hunch. All right, let's go on to the next post here. Here we had a post from Boat Surfer on Wall Street Silver, and hopefully Boat Surfer is cool with me showing one of his cool Reddit posts off. This is not a meme stock. It's not a penny stock. It's not a crypto coin. This is a U.S. government debt. You know what I said about this too? I don't mean to get so dark on you guys, but I'm going to go dark. That kind of probably looks like the world population too, right? And what usually happens on the back end of a parabola like that? Yet another reason for me to own real money. This is important. Germany is sending its first Iris-T air defense system to Ukraine. And I touched a pop-up. We'll let that load. Here's a tweet from Holger Zispitz. Now, Germany is well on the way to losing its last competitive advantage, its good credit rating. German bonds crash with 10-year yields jumping to 2.34%, the highest since 2011 on German EU debt support. And we can be sure I've been beating the drum on this. As Germany goes, so shall the EU. They might be the apex of the EU, certainly a cornerstone, if not the apex stone, the touchstone there over at the EU, right? And then here you have it, looking pretty spiky. Here we have an article from The Guardian. And I know many people have already heard about this headline here, but we'll cover it here too. The U.S. is headed for a recession, says the head of JP Morgan Chase Bank. This is serious. And these guys always like to tell you after you already know it. And I think if I were to make an argument for them and try and think in their shoes a little bit, they're always going to tell you after you already know it. And they're always going to give you the best possible estimate, but still kind of telling you the truth at the same time. The U.S. global economy is facing a very, very serious mix of headwinds that is likely to cause a recession by the middle of next year, warned Jamie Dimon, chief executive of JP Morgan Chase, the largest U.S. investment bank, on Monday. Dimon pointed to the effects of runaway inflation, sharp interest rate rises, and Russia's war in Ukraine as factors that informed his thinking. But he added that the U.S. is actually doing well, and consumers were likely to be in better shape compared to the global financial crisis of 2008. Dimon said the U.S. Federal Reserve waited too long and did too little as inflation jumped to a 40-year high the past 18 months. He said the central bank, which raised rates 5 times this year, is clearly catching up. Tell us something we don't know there, Jamie. Next up, I have this article from RT. I've been getting great articles from RT. Major Russian bank winds down Swiss business. According to a top official, the operations will be referred to external banking partners. Gazprom Bank chairman says Gazprom Bank will cease operations in Switzerland after a strategic review of various options. The chairman of the directors, Ivan Dunn, said on a statement Monday that decision is a result of an in-depth strategy analysis and is being taken in close consultation with the Swiss Financial Market Supervisory Authority. Existing relationships will be wound down or referred to external partners in the coming months. The whole point of this article, all I really wanted to point out here was that we were supposed to be crippling Russia, crippling them with sanctions and making them outcasts. And it seems as though that they're fine on their own. Like, they're doing this on their own accord here. This is their choice. And so apparently they feel confident going alone. And the Swiss are notoriously neutral in most affairs, correct? I mean, at least on the banking front, they've been pretty all-inclusive and avoided a lot of politics, the way I understand it. Please correct me if I'm wrong. So that's very interesting to me. Here we have a tweet from Michael Silver Squeeze. Thank you, Michael, for always giving us the great data. And we do see that today, the COMEX vault drops under 312 million ounces, the lowest level since May 29, 2020. Open interest is now equal to 202% of all vaulted silver and 1,572% of registered silver. Most notably here is we have been waiting We've been waiting to crack that 40,000 or 40 million ounce floor there, right in there. All the apes in Wall Street Silver and the Silver Bugs community and the precious metal stacking communities on Facebook and other places, also on Twitter, part of the Silver Squeeze movement. Hoping to pierce that 40 million marker. We did see earlier Neon Revolt pointing out that the Hunt brothers did it, leaving only 50 million in the COMEX vault. So we are now considerably lower than that. And we see the LBMA is being drained as well. But we're yet to see any type of reaction, at least in the wider markets and in the out of the COMEX. Pretty interesting how we're hovering around this 40 million. I did have this thought, which is completely not based on anything. It's just a thought. But I wondered, what if there is no 40 million? What if this is the actual bottom of the barrel right here? It would be a good time to see. I would love to look. During the initial silver squeeze, they had a huge deposit. It was being drained. And then there was a massive deposit of silver right in the middle of the squeeze that kind of took the wind out of the sails. I wonder how much that was. And of course, we never found out where that came from, right? Here's another tweet from Michael. Thanks again, Michael. September saw a record for the largest combined monthly withdrawal from the COMEX and the LBMA, coming in at almost 58 million ounces, 58.5 million ounces. The total combined withdrawals in 2002 or 2022, now almost 332 million ounces between the two. And you see that red gash there. Vaults being drained, that cannot be mistaken for anything else. Have you ordered any shiny recently? Here we had an ominous tweet from Michael Burry. Oh, it's not going to just pull it right up for me, eh? Oh, it was deleted. That's why he's infamous for posting interesting stuff and then deleting it. But there was a lot of speculation as to he posted a chart with no information on it. And it looks like many other charts look. And it's just a parabola up and a parabola down. And there was people were saying that it was potentially ARC. People were speculating that it was the Dow. And I did make the same joke as I made earlier. I said maybe that's global population. Kind of looks like the Fed debt projected out into the future. I think it was probably ARC, the ARC fund. Maybe Tesla. But many of these charts look the same, don't they? That's been a theme of this show for as long as I've been doing it, is one chart after another with a steep upward and downward trend. This is probably the most interesting. It's probably the most interesting tweet I saw today. Baseload writes, the human brain is not wired to grasp exponentials, hence not being prepared for what is coming. We have two possible paths forward. This is the one I meant to hit.
Sting is a pyramid since time immemorial. Shit runs downhill, money goes up. It's that simple.
The debt spiral unwind and the credit system collapse to zero. The credit system is saved If so, we see each other in 5 years at 200 trillions. Yes, I would think so. It's one or the other, ain't it? It's runaway inflation or it's massive defaults. And we have a very steady upward trend. This is simply United States government debt. It's religiously following this trend line and projected out only until January of 2028. That would have us hitting 208 trillions. Given the chart and the tweet, you plan to nothing, paralyzed as fuck is this. I really like the Happy Hawaiian, but I don't understand the Happy Hawaiian writes, I'll take the under on 200 trillion in 5 years, probably more like 40 to 50 trillion in federal debt by 2028. And someone did respond, what part of the 40-year-long trend line did you not understand? The thing is, 2030s, we were talking a quadrillion, and I don't know what causes the Happy Hawaiian. He's a very smart analyst, very technical, to look at this chart and believe that we're gonna take this trend line and make it horizontal. There's no evidence there. There's nothing in the policy. So how do we go about doing that? I suppose the higher interest rates would be how. And for how long? And until we wreck the global economy, how much? We're in a rock and a hard place. I have my doubts there, Happy Hawaiian. I have my doubts. On to the next tweet. Oh, it took me to the top again. One of the hazards of running this show through Twitter is it might just refresh your feed and then you got to scroll all the way down again. And this is actually the last... This is the last tweet of the day here. India's imports of Russian oil jump fivefold, helping war efforts. So we see here India decisively, I won't say taking sides, but they're showing that they're not concerned. They're not concerned with preserving, I don't know what to call it. We had some sort of alliance with India. It appeared like they were a really important ally and that we would need to hang on to them as counterbalance against China. I mean, and the entire Middle East, that we really needed India in our corner as a strong ally and that we were putting resources into building that relationship. I saw speculation that we would be using India to help aid us in relieving some of our crazy dependence on China, to produce things that we would otherwise only rely upon China to produce. But at some point we did see India part ways. And I saw from different headlines, the US was taking somewhat of a threatening tone with India, warning them that they were endangering the relationship. And not too long after that, you do see the Prime Minister Modi with Putin hugging it up, having a good time, laughing, showing that there's a genuine relationship there. And they just don't have that with Biden now, do they? And that's all I got today, except for one more thing I want to talk about. I do appreciate you. Last thing I want to say today is I'm keeping a very close eye on this Jerome Powell. He has my name. And talk about a dude that is damned if you do and damned if you don't. He's in a tough spot. And no matter what he does, someone's upset with him. And I'm trying not to think in terms of good guys and bad guys right here, okay? But he's not responsible for the past 100 years of monetary policy of the US. But we're certainly reaching a crossroads. And if they do make the decision to raise the interest rates and keep them high, that would be a pro-America decision, but that would also be a war that's, see, I slipped the wrong word in there. That would be a decision that is not unlike a wartime decision because of the lives that it will cost to continue taking those interest rates higher and to hold them there as energy becomes a crisis, as food becomes a crisis. And the pain that is felt around the world is real. But wouldn't it be in America's best interest if we were only thinking selfishly to crank those interest rates high and keep them there? But that runs counter to what I would pretty much expect from the Fed and the Treasury right now. I had it in my mind that they were just all together with the EU and the World Economic Forum and that whole clique, right? There's a lot of words we use for them: the Western banking cartel, the globalists. And with these policy decisions, you see Jerome Powell deviate from the approval of the EU and NATO. I've seen many headlines where they're criticizing him and giving him what sounds like a warning. And it is surprising to me to see him stick to his guns here. But also, what happens to Biden if we keep the high interest rates and we certainly slip into recession, and it causes all these other problems with defaults around the world, and Biden's going to take the heat for that, and the Democrats, and people don't understand. All they know is that there's pain. They feel pain, and that's all they really get. And that one's going to be tougher to explain away. I mean, there was already economic hardship on the way, but I just assumed we would get through this through hyperinflation. I've been saying the whole time that these politicians can't do anything honestly. So why would they default on programs and cut spending when they could just as easily hyperinflate and hope people don't notice? Or, just gaslight them into thinking that this is the way that it's always been, as all assets tumble in value, except gold and silver, right? Very interesting. I don't know quite what to make of this. There's still plenty of time for a pivot. Is he only doing this? Are the interest rates only staying high because they know that they'll have an event to blame that will arrive shortly, that will give them the excuse that they need to pivot and lower the interest rates all the way back down to zero and go back to the easy money and the rich getting richer? And that would certainly please the Western banking cartel, the globalists, whatever you want to call them. Because it does seem to me, and I am no expert on this, but it does appear that these interest rates are somewhat strengthening the dollar and the position of the US around the world. These nations that are stuck on US debt, can't get out. They're just getting in deeper and deeper. And I don't want to use the wrong words here, but it would be it's not pro-America, but you'd be lying if you said that it didn't help in some way to maintain power, to maintain the dollar. That would be the path to maintaining the dollar, the economic pain. I'm sure everyone by now has heard of the whole Volcker thesis and raising the interest rates sky high, and the criticism from the precious metals community is that they don't have the balls to put the rates that high. But what if they don't need to go that high? What if just by moderately raising them and holding them there, that the leveling that it will cause could have somewhat of the same effect because of the amount of derivatives in the system. But surely one man is not to blame for this condition that we're in. Oh, it's been over 100 years since 1913 by now, right? Food for thought. I do appreciate you for following me in the show. And I hope that was interesting for you. And I hope that I served you. And I'm going to be here every day giving you the most interesting articles and posts from around the web. Once again, my name is Jerome and this is Psycho Silver. I do hope that you are in good health tonight. And if you're not, I do hope that you'll get better. You have a good night. Bye.